The wrapping paper flew like confetti. Naomi shrieked when she tore open her new laptop. Her little brother bounced up and down with a headset still in its box. Miles smiled as Blair leaned in and kissed his cheek, holding up the designer purse he'd surprised her with, though she'd picked it out herself. The room glowed warm with pine-scented candles and firelight. Everyone looked so pleased, so photographed, so full. I sat at the edge of the couch, a cup of tea warming my palms. The steam curled gently, the only thing rising in my direction. Boxes piled high around the tree, tags curled from ribbon, every name read aloud except mine. Blair turned suddenly, her manicured hand to her chest. "Wait a second," she said, scanning the floor. "Did we forget one?" Miles looked down at his coffee. Naomi opened her mouth like she wanted to speak but closed it. "Oh no," Blair said, her voice high and sweet. "Like frosting. That's all sugar and no warmth. We must have misplaced yours?" "Maren. So much going on? You know how it is?" I nodded once. "Of course." My grandson laughed softly, not cruelly, just without thought. "Granny's used to it." The room chuckled, light, unbothered. I sipped my tea. Steady. Then I set the cup down and reached calmly into my purse. The sound of paper shifting was louder than it should have been. I pulled out a white envelope. Thick and smooth. "Actually," I said, standing slowly, "I brought something for myself this year." Blair blinked. The laughter quieted. Naomi sat up straighter. "I thought I'd share it with you all." I laid the envelope gently on the coffee table in front of me. It made the smallest sound when it landed, but somehow it echoed. I took my seat again, folded my hands in my lap. "You know that little blog I started?" I said lightly. "Turns out, it's not so little anymore." Their silence was the kind I hadn't heard from them in years. Not bored, not distracted, just stunned. I lifted the corner of the envelope, revealing the first page. Clean black ink, 4 digits, bold and neat. And they hadn't even seen the key yet. 4 Christmases ago, I stood in the kitchen with oven mitts and a heart that still believed I had a place. I brought 3 pies apple, sweet potato, and Miles's favorite pecan. I wrapped gifts by hand, even tied bows with sprigs of rosemary from my garden. Naomi had just turned 13. I remember thinking how grown she looked as she peeked over my shoulder and smiled shyly at the smell of cinnamon. But no one really spoke to me. The house buzzed with chatter. But I wasn't in it. Blair whispered something to Miles while I was in mid-sentence. He nodded. I finished the story anyway, though I could feel their attention sliding elsewhere. At dinner, my name card was missing. I sat at the end, near the sliding glass door, where the draft crept in every time someone opened it. They passed plates and never looked my way. Naomi noticed, scooped potatoes onto mine without a word. Blair complimented her own stuffing twice, then changed the subject when I mentioned the community garden I'd joined. I gave everyone gifts that night, small things, thoughtful things. A leather journal for Miles, handmade earrings for Blair, a watercolored bookmark Naomi once admired in a store window. No one opened them while I was there. The next morning, I left before sunrise. No hugs, no leftovers packed for the road. I remember standing in the driveway, breath visible in the cold, thinking, you weren't even missed. My birthday came that spring. I waited all day, not for gifts, just a voice, a card, something. It never came. I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and let myself cry, not loud, not dramatic, just quiet and aching. That night, I cleared the guest room closet. I deleted the calendar reminders for their school plays, and I wrote a single sentence in my journal: stop asking to be invited. And from that day forward, I didn't. I didn't wake up one morning and decide to build a business. It was quieter than that. Slower. I started by cleaning the kitchen, not for anyone's visit. Just because I wanted to. Then I found an old notebook in the drawer, half filled with journal entries from when Ed was still alive. I read them all, every page. Then I picked up a pen. The words didn't come easy at first, but I kept writing. One afternoon, I watched a video about women starting blogs after 60. The woman in the video had silver hair and a laugh that made me feel like I was already known. I watched the video again, then another, and another. I took notes in a spiral-bound notebook. My handwriting wobbled, but it was mine. I bought a second-hand laptop from a local consignment store. The keys stuck a little, but it worked. I taught myself how to open an email list, how to design simple covers in Canva, how to write copy that didn't sound like begging. I named my blog Second Wind Letters because that's what it felt like. Another breath I didn't know I still had. At first, 5 people read my first post, then 20. Then a woman named Lorraine sent an email from Minnesota that just said, "I feel seen." I printed it out and taped it to my wall. I joined a Facebook group called Silver Women Rising. We shared questions, screenshots, small victories. One woman figured out how to upload her first ebook and cried. I did too. Not because I needed her win, but because it felt like maybe we all still had something left in us. By my 71st birthday, my little blog had 1,000 subscribers. I didn't mention it to Miles. I didn't need to. I wasn't waiting anymore. And one night, just before bed, I opened a new tab and typed into the search bar, how to open an online shop. The phone rang on a Thursday morning. I was in the middle of formatting a new set of journal pages, something simple about gratitude. Paired with watercolor illustrations I'd licensed from a retired artist in Vermont. I almost let it go to voicemail, but I saw Blair's name. I hadn't heard her voice in nearly 3 years. Not a real conversation. Anyway, the last message was a forwarded photo of Naomi at her science fair. Before that, a thumbs-up emoji in response to a holiday card I sent. I answered on the 4th ring. "Maren," she said brightly, too brightly. "It's Blair." I know. There was a pause. Then a light laugh like we were old friends. "So, Miles and I were talking, and we wanted to invite you to Charleston for Christmas this year. With the kids. Everyone will be there." I looked out the window. The last leaves had dropped from the oak tree. The sky was the color of dishwater, cold and bare. That's unexpected. I know. She rushed. "But Naomi's been asking about you, and Miles thought it's time." Time for what? She didn't say. I said I'd think about it. She sounded relieved just to hear that. We hung up. I sat there a long time after, phone still in hand. My tea had gone cold. I walked to the bedroom, opened the bottom drawer of my nightstand, and pulled out the envelope I'd sealed 2 weeks earlier. Numbers. Milestones. Proof. Not for them. For me. I placed it in my bag, along with the gifts I'd already chosen. And that evening, I booked a one-way ticket to Charleston. The front door swung open, and Blair stood there in a matching knit set, eyes wide, smile polished. "Maren." She said like a toast, "You made it." She leaned in for a quick hug, arms light, body stiff. Her perfume smelled citrusy and expensive. Inside, the house gleamed. A white and silver tree stood in the corner, not a handmade ornament in sight. Candles flickered in glass jars. Holiday jazz hummed in the background. Miles appeared, still looking down at his phone. "Hey, Mom. Glad you're here." I nodded. Glad to be. The kids didn't look up from their screens. I waved anyway. Naomi gave a half smile. The younger one muttered, "Hey." Blair led me upstairs. We kept the guest room just for you. The room smelled faintly of mildew. The bedding was an old floral pattern I remembered from their first apartment. No lamp, The overhead light flickered when I turned it on. Dust clung to the dresser. She placed a towel on the edge of the bed. "If you need anything, just holler," she said. Already halfway out the door. "Thank you." I unpacked, slowly, one pair of slacks, 2 sweaters, the small stack of wrapped gifts. I placed the envelope on the nightstand, smoothed the pillow, and sat on the edge of the bed for a long moment. Later, we gathered in the dining room for dinner. The table was long, the place settings exact. My name card sat at the far end near the water pitcher. Conversation buzzed. Blair spoke about year-end metrics at her job. Miles chimed in with something about an investment app. Naomi asked about cryptocurrency. No one asked how I'd been. Not one question. I reached for my tea and smiled into the silence. The roast duck was passed without a glance. I served myself a small piece. Added a spoonful of quinoa salad that looked more like garnish than food. I listened while Blair detailed her company's holiday campaign and how she managed to double their engagement rate. Miles nodded, chimed in with something about ad funnels. I stayed quiet, letting the room move without me. Midway through the meal, Blair turned to me with a half smile, one hand still wrapped around her wine glass. "So, Maren," she said, voice lilting like she'd rehearsed it. "What are you up to these days? Still into your little retirement hobbies?" The word hobbies dangled in the air like a thread she knew would unravel something. The room chuckled. Miles grinned. Not cruelly, just carelessly. Naomi looked up from her plate but didn't speak. I looked at Blair. "Something like that," I said, keeping my tone even. She nodded, already turning back to the others. That was all she needed from me, a soundbite. A harmless placeholder. The laughter continued, the table pulsing with momentum I hadn't earned a seat in. I chewed slowly, watching each of them perform the version of family they believed in, one where I was a footnote, polite and smiling, always grateful just to be near. No one asked what I was writing. No one asked if I was still teaching myself new things or building something of my own. And honestly, I knew better than to offer it. Not here. Not like this. I took another sip of tea and let the taste settle. They still saw me as someone who'd already had her turn. The woman who brought pies, gave hugs, and faded easily into the corner of a photo. But something had shifted. They didn't know it yet, but tomorrow morning, they would. Wrapping paper was everywhere. Naomi was hugging a brand new laptop. Her little brother waved a game controller in the air like a trophy. Blair clapped, saying, "You did good this year," as Miles unzipped his new golf bag. He grinned, then handed her a gift she'd clearly picked out herself. They posed in front of the tree, taking turns snapping pictures on their phones. I sat quietly at the edge of the couch. I smiled when they glanced my way. Not because I felt included, but because I'd already decided what today would be. Blair scanned the floor. "Wait, did we forget one?" she said. "Too loud." Miles looked into his coffee. Naomi opened her mouth, then closed it. "Oh no," Blair said with a little laugh. "We must have missed yours. Maren, so much going on, you know how it is?" I nodded. "Of course." My grandson chuckled. "Granny's used to it." The laughter that followed was small, soft, careless. I reached into my bag. "Actually," I said, "I got myself something this year." The room quieted. I pulled out a white envelope. 4 pages stapled together. I placed it on the coffee table and looked up. "You know that little blog I started? It's called Second Wind Letters. It has about 85,000 readers now, mostly women over 60. I write about things people like to skip over: grief, invisibility, starting again." No one moved. I also run an Etsy shop, journals, printable guides, ebooks, I sell about 100 products a week. Miles blinked. Wait. Seriously, last quarter, I said, tapping the first page. My income was just over $38,000. Blair's eyebrows lifted. You made that? I nodded. Built it myself. Learned everything online. I reached back into my bag and held up a silver key. This, I said, is for my new condo. 2-bedroom. Closed last week. It's downtown Asheville, near the co-op. The key caught the light. The room caught the silence. They still saw me as the woman who sat quietly in the corner, but I wasn't sitting there anymore. Not really. The silence didn't last long. Miles cleared his throat. Mom, this is incredible. I mean, really. You've built something big. Blair leaned forward, resting her manicured hand on her knee. It's impressive. Maren. And honestly, it's exactly the kind of thing that could scale if done right. With the right branding. A little help on the back end, we could turn this into something bigger. I looked at her. She smiled. The polite kind. I've been thinking about starting a blog, too. She went on. Or maybe a digital product line. We could build off what you've already created. Make it a family brand. Collaborative. Shared audience? Miles nodded beside her. Yeah, we could really help grow this. Add new channels. Expand the store. Bring in more traffic. I took a breath, set the key gently back on the table. No. Thank you. Blair blinked. Sorry, I'm not interested in a partnership, I said. Steady? Miles frowned. We're just trying to help. I know. But let me explain something. I looked at both of them, their faces eager now, attentive in a way they hadn't been in years. You didn't see value in me when I brought pies, when I remembered birthdays, showed up for school plays, sent cards you never answered. I was someone you managed, not someone you invited in. Miles looked down. Blair opened her mouth but said nothing. And now, I continued, now that it makes money. Now you want to be part of it. Neither responded. The weight of the room shifted. This wasn't built to be handed off like a favor. I said, I built it in silence. While you left me there, that silence gave me time. That time gave me this. Blair sat back. Her smile was gone. Miles didn't speak. I picked up my tea again. Warm in my hand. The next move wasn't theirs. Not anymore. Later that afternoon. The noise faded. The younger kids disappeared into their rooms. Blair busied herself in the kitchen, banging dishes louder than necessary. Miles went out back, pretending to shovel the patio. Naomi lingered. She helped clear the plates without being asked, stacking forks and wiping crumbs with slow, careful movements. I stayed at the table, sipping the last of my tea. You really made all that? She asked quietly. I nodded. One post at a time. She smiled, genuine, not polite. It's amazing. I reached into my coat pocket and slid a small envelope across the table. Your favorite bookstore, I said. Use it on something that doesn't have to be for school. Her fingers curled around it like a secret. You didn't have to. I wanted to. She looked down, then back at me. Can I learn from you someday? That question landed differently. Not out of obligation or strategy, but out of something real. I studied her face. So much of Miles in it. But something all her own, too. Yes. I said, whenever you're ready. She smiled again. Wider this time. And tucked the envelope into her hoodie pocket, like it was worth more than anything she'd opened that morning. We stood and walked toward the stairs together. Her arm brushing mine. For the first time in days. I felt like someone had actually looked at me, not through me. And when I reached the guest room, I began folding my clothes, slowly, one by one. I packed before the sun had fully set. The kids were still behind closed doors. Blair was rinsing something at the sink. Miles stood near the front window, pretending not to watch me. Naomi helped carry my bag down the stairs. At the door, she hugged me again, tight this time. Both arms. I held her for a moment longer than I planned to. "You've always been the coolest one in this house," she whispered. I smiled and kissed her forehead. "Don't forget that you saw me. That matters." Blair turned as I reached for the handle. "You're really leaving today?" I nodded. "I've got my own tradition waiting." Miles gave a small nod. "Safe drive." I didn't linger. I rolled my suitcase to the car, loaded it myself, and pulled away from the curb without looking back. 20 minutes into the drive, my phone buzzed. Then again. Then again. Miles. Blair. Even Naomi. I didn't open any of the messages. Instead, I turned on my soft jazz playlist and let the road carry me home. That night, after a hot shower and a cup of tea, I sat at my desk and opened my laptop. The draft was waiting. I scrolled to the bottom, added one last line, and hit publish. The gift I gave myself. The comments came fast. "Thank you for this. I needed it today. You wrote exactly what I couldn't say out loud." Dozens, then hundreds. Words from women I'd never met who understood every beat of the silence I once lived in. I closed the laptop gently and leaned back in my chair. The quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt earned. 3 months passed like the slow turning of a page I finally wanted to read. Mornings came early, quiet and full. I spent them answering messages from women across the country, some widowed, some divorced, some simply tired of being overlooked. We met weekly on Zoom, 6 of us at first, then 10, then more. We laughed through tech glitches. We celebrated first posts, first product sales, first brave declarations. One woman launched a poetry blog. Another started a journal club for women over 70. Most of them just wanted to be seen. I gave them space, and they filled it. Naomi arrived for spring break with a duffel bag, a second-hand laptop, and a spiral notebook already labeled Content Ideas. She sat across from me at the kitchen table with a cup of peppermint tea and eyes that didn't wander. I showed her how to use Canva, how to format digital files, how to schedule a newsletter. She caught on quickly. When she asked if she could design her own mini journal, I slid my laptop across the table without hesitation. "You're ready." That night, I opened my planner and turned to a fresh page. At the top, I wrote Q2 goals and underlined it once. Launch mentorship guide, expand spring journal line, plan Asheville subscriber retreat. I paused, looked around the room, then underlined the last one again. They forgot me once. Now, they subscribed to me.